Hey there. Welcome back to the Azure Community Conference. It's a pleasure to meet you all virtually this year. Hopefully next year we'll make it in person. But thank you for taking time off to attend this session, which is Chatbots using Azure AI. So a little bit about myself. My name is Liji Thomas. I'm a manager in the modern app dev space with Velorum Reply. I'm excited to be sharing my experiences working in the space of conversational AI with you today. So the agenda of the session, we'll be covering a little about the background, AI and conversational AI. We'll look at the conversational AI landscape, look at the market, the industry, the trends, etc. Before we get into the crux of the session, which would be Azure Bot Service and Azure Cognitive Service. We finally wrap it up with some Q&A and discussion. So stay tuned. All right, let's get started. Conversational AI is a much discussed topic, especially in the wake of recent times with the pandemic. Organizations are looking at ways in which they can accelerate their digital transformation journey. And conversational AI is a key component of that mission. So when organizations have had to shut down their offices and due to the lockdown restrictions, and employees have not been able to reach the premises, and couple that with the increase in customer demand pressures, they've been looking at new avenues in which they can not just differentiate themselves, they can cope with these pressures. And we're here to understand how we can seize the opportunities provided by this area, conversational AI, because for one, we know that the pandemic has for perhaps ever changed drastically the way we will work and will live culturally and globally. And so let's try to understand what the opportunities in this space are. So the story thus far, our industry especially, we know, has gone through a lot of transitions in the last couple of decades. From the PC era to the internet era to the mobile era, and now the artificial intelligence era, as they so call it, or Industry 4.0 and all the buzzwords related to that. And AI itself is talked about so much and so interchangeably and synonymously with a lot of other phrases like machine learning and deep learning, etc., the nuances of which we would probably not cover in this session. Keep it for another day. But I'd like to invite your attention to the timeline below. It's interesting that AI, or artificial intelligence, looks like it has been around for quite a while, from the 1950s or the 60s. And so the obvious question is, why did we just start talking about it in the recent times? And why did we have to go through what experts say the AI winter all these years? So to answer that question, it's important to answer another question, which is, how is AI programming different? Different from the structured programming or the traditional programming paradigm? Most simply put, AI programming can be thought about teaching machines and not just instructing machines. So if you would like to compare that with the way we teach humans, if I had to teach my toddler to identify a cat, I'd probably not have to show her the image of every single cat on the planet. She'd probably be able to identify patterns out of the little data that I show her, maybe a couple of images, and she'd be able to say what a cat is and what a cat is not as well. So if you want to borrow that same concepts to the machine world, the technical world, think about it. Why did we probably not be able to teach machines way back in the 1950s and 60s? For one, in order to teach machines, we need data, and we need loads of data, which obviously we did not have back then. And then we needed compute power and really strong, powerful computing infrastructure. Most of all, we wanted powerful algorithms or advanced statistical models that would be able to leverage this data and this infrastructure. So altogether, these were not prevalent in these ages, and gives you a clue as to why we're talking about that right now. You're right. There's been some breakthroughs enabling AI in the last couple of years, especially around big data, cloud computing, and powerful algorithms. And big data does not just refer to the availability of data, it also refers to the ability to store and to harness that data. Cloud computing, thanks to the cloud providers around the globe, we now have full access, complete access to these powerful cloud resources and advanced statistical models and algorithms to be able to leverage both the data and the computing power. Now, the reason why we're discussing this is because the evolution of chatbots follows almost the same trajectory. So back in the 1980s, you can imagine someone using the PCs or their desktop applications. And then with the advent of the internet, the 90s, go on to use the websites and the web applications. And the 2000s, you have this mobile era, the smartphone, and download an application from the Play Store or the App Store to service your demands. And now we have the AI chatbots, or let's say any application that's integrated with artificial intelligence. So if you connect the dots, you kind of see the picture. The proliferation of data and computing power having increased, and the devices getting smaller in size, so is the patience of human beings as well. Humans do not want to learn and relearn the navigational systems and get accustomed to the flow of brand new applications. They prefer to have a provision to interact with any application the way they interact with each other. Like historically, the most natural and intuitive form of interaction that we've known ever has been conversation. And any application that can provide to that extent would definitely stand an advantage. So let's not make assumptions. Let's ask ourselves, what exactly is a chatbot? Well, it's known by not a lot of glossy names: conversational agents, enterprise agents, virtual assistants, depending on the level of sophistication that it contains. But a chatbot at the end of the day is just another software application. It's just another program. It can stand on its own like Alexa or Siri. It can be integrated to your web application or your website or portal. And what can a bot do? Well, that depends entirely on you or your business case. You can use the bot to automate any menial task, like setting up an alarm or timer, to even booking your dentist appointment or reserving your dinner. But most importantly, why chatbots? Why would someone use a chatbot and not prefer to use a website or an application? Because it does the same thing. So the single most defining factor here is the ability to make the interaction feel, the experience feel more human-like. It feels less like talking to a computer or an application and more like talking to a human. Of course, it's available 24/7, 365. I mean, imagine having an enterprise assistant that's available for the employees. It's just like another digital employee, and doesn't apply for paid time off as well. It reduces your customer lines. It provides immediate responses, especially if you're on tight SLAs. The initial investment in setting up the chatbot apart, over the period of time, the return of investment is seen to reduce the costs overall. It helps you, the organizations, to reach new channels. If you have a customer base or an audience base that's prevalent over Facebook, for example, you could consider deploying a chatbot there. You don't have to open new offices or recruit new people to increase your audience base. And of course, it increases engagement all over. So here's the history of the chatbots So to just say that Alex and Siri is probably not the first ones around. We've had bots as early as 1966 with Eliza, Parry, Jabberwocky. And looking into the future, it seems quite promising with all the statistics that we're reading from the industry today. For example, it's anticipated that over 95% of customer transactions will be through AI chatbots in the next 5 years or so. And a lot of brands, a lot of companies have already jump-started in this bandwagon. Major brands across industries, retail, healthcare, travel, hospitality, small scale, medium scale, large scale organizations with their data on-prem, in cloud, have all started to adopt some kind of an AI and conversational AI strategy as part of their portfolio. And interestingly, there are a few innovative bots in this line. To just feed your curiosity, Rose Intelligence, for example, is one bot that helps lawyers. So it's an AI lawyer bot. What it does is that it parses all these data. You can imagine the amount of data for legal, and it gives it to the lawyer at hand so that the lawyer can do what he is best at, presenting it to the client. Tara is an AI recruiter bot, stands for talent acquisition and recruiting automation. What it does is it evaluates a candidate's profile based on a set of data points, over 100 plus data points, and it matches the candidate's profile with an employer's requirement. So, for example, if it's a software engineer, it could look for all the GitHub activities of the software engineer and looks immensely for all those data points. Wobot is a therapy bot. It's based on the principles of CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's a much researched area in the field of depression, and Wobot helps to that effect. All right, let's debunk some chatbot myths we probably did have coming into this session. First up, chatbots are a new technology. Now you know that's not the truth. It's been around for a long time, long enough, but it's just relevant and developing. It's not new, it's developing and relevant, and we know why as well. Chatbots can only support customer service, not entirely, because we've seen some really good use cases for chatbots even outside that. All bots use AI. So there are two kinds of bots, bots that use AI and bots that are really rule-based or very tightly script-based. Those bots would not be able to do anything more than what it's been programmed for. And four, you have chatbots versus humans. Slightly controversial topic, but we always get to read these in our articles. Think about the possibility of chatbots and humans. For example, in a customer service scenario, if the chatbots had to take up 40% of the frontline queries, it means that it is freeing up the human agent to do something far more creatively. So chatbots and humans is a lethal combination there. Now, chatbots are difficult to build. I'll leave you at that and take a pause here, because for the rest of the session, we're going to see how difficult or easy it is to actually build a chatbot. All right. I couldn't put it any better than how Satya has said this prophetically about a couple of years back in one of those build conferences. He said, human language is the new UI layer, and bots are like the new applications. And it's encouraging to see a lot of companies in this space, especially the giants of the industry. If you look at the Gartner's 2020 Magic Quadrant, the top right quadrant, you'd see the major players of the industry, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and all in this spectrum. And it's great to have them there, because from these giant players, what we, the developer community, can expect is, at the least, platforms to create these bots. And talking about platforms, let's examine this for a while. Software engineers are pretty familiar with SDLC, Software Development Lifecycle. And a bot developer would translate that into a bot development lifecycle, or BDLC as we call it. So here we have a couple of steps that we think is a part of the BDLC. So first up, we plan for the bot. So this is where you decide what the use case of your bot is. You use the best practices, guidelines, principles, etc. And a good platform should be able to help you plan your bot. It should help you build your bot, code it, provide you the SDK, the framework, the tools and support to build your bot. And once you build it, you need to aggressively test your bot. After that, if you're happy with what you see, you can publish your bot. Let the world know that you have a bot out there. Finally, you connect the bot. So this is the most important part, where you put the bot, you deploy your bot to the respective channels. And that depends on where your audience is. So if you find a major part of your audience on Facebook, it has to be there. If it's on Slack, it has to be there. If it's internal bot, probably Teams. So you connect it to the various channels. Now this is where the actual work begins, because now you need to evaluate the bot. You need to very closely watch and monitor your bot and see if it's behaving the way you are expecting it to. And based on what insights you derive, you go back to your drawing board, again, build, test, publish, and connect. So it goes over and over again, and that is the BDLC cycle. So let's examine that from the Azure AI side, and let's see what support we get from this platform. The Azure AI Platform provides Azure infrastructure in terms of data and compute. It provides AI services in terms of pre-built and custom-built services. It provides tools in the form of SDK and framework. But for the sake of this session, we would just focus on probably the bot service and the cognitive services. So deep dive into Azure Bot Service. As we said, that is one environment, one platform that is purpose-built for creating bots. So it provides an open source, as it uses an open source SDK called Bot Framework SDK, and it helps you create, connect, publish, test, evaluate the bots. You can connect it to all those channels that you see out of the box from the framework. All right, time for a quick demo. Let's try to build a bot. And you can see my screen here. So this is the portal. This is the Azure portal, portal.azure.com. If you have a subscription, you can go in today and you can do this. So let's create a resource. We're going to create a bot resource. So what I would do is I would search for bot. That's the easiest way to start. So search for bot when you'd like to create a resource. And you should be able to see a couple of templates, but I'll choose the first one that I see, which is web app bot. And it's fairly simple. You create. And as part of creating a web app bot, all that you need to do is fill in a couple of parameters here. So the most important one here is the bot handle. The bot handle is perhaps the identifier for your bot. So it helps you identify your bot. So imagine I'm trying to create a bot for the conference demo here, and I would fill in the bot handle, feed in my subscription, my resource group, the pricing tier, the location, turn apps insights on. Note that there are various bot templates that you can choose from. Languages as well, C# and Node.js. I'd keep C# and I'd choose EcoBot for this purpose, and I go ahead and click create. So when you click create, what it does is that it will create a bot for you and it will deploy it within Azure. And just for the sake of time, I have a bot that's actually created, and this is the AzConfDevo bot. Now, before we do anything, if you look at the left pane, there are a lot of options here. But before we do anything, I would just go into the test in web chat panel. So this is an option to test your bot, to interact with your bot within the Azure portal itself. So let's see. I've created an EcoBot like we saw. So an EcoBot does nothing but just echoes back whatever I say. So if I say hi, it says hi. If I say hello, it just says hello. So that's not super useful. I agree. So what I do is I would go to the Build tab and download my bot source codes. And I hit download. It packages all the source for me in the form of a zip file, and I get to download it. And I can open it up in my local environment. I've just done that, so I will show you what that looks like. So this is what I got to download from the Azure portal. And this is the EcoBot. And I can just run it again without any changes, without touching the code as yet. And you'd see that you'd be able to run the bot in your local environment. So this means that you can connect to your bots even in your local environment, just like you do inside Azure. And a typical development lifecycle would be such. So you would work on your bot, you would get the source code. You can change the source code as much as you like, maybe cater to your specific business case. It could be retail, customer service, finance, hospitality, as you'd like. And build in that business logic, and you would test the bot. You would run the bot locally. You would also test the bot locally. And only after all your development has completed locally would you intermittently at least publish to Azure. So let's talk about testing bots locally. Just like we tested it inside the Azure portal, we have an option to test the bot locally by using a tool called the Bot Emulator. So now my bot is on localhost 3978, and I'm going to show you the Bot Framework Emulator. So this is a tool that I got to download, and this is how I would test my bot. I would just open my bot and I would connect it to my local host on that same portal. So the endpoint of my bot is localhost 3978 API/messages, and I would connect. Simple. So again, I can interact with my bot just the same way that I interacted with it in the portal. And as I said, when you're happy with this, you can go ahead and publish it. So publishing is about either using the publish profile, or you can use, set up CI/CD pipelines and have that deployment happen. So this is a quick demo of what is possible using Azure Bot Service. Now, to take this a little further, as we saw, we have the provision to change that bot source code. It's a .NET Core application, so you can change as you'd like and build on all your business rules and logic. But as we discussed earlier, the success factor, the major criteria to consider for your bot is adding human-like capabilities. So the superpowers that make us the humans that we are can be majorly classified around a few categories: language, our vision abilities, our abilities to make decisions, speech capabilities, and search. And having identified these, what Microsoft has done is that they have built a set of APIs or AI services around each of these categories. So there are API services around decision, around vision, language, speech, and search. And this comprehensive pre-trained APIs or AI services are what's called cognitive services. And this is now available to the developer community so that you and I can make use of this and infuse artificial intelligence into our apps. And just so you appreciate where this is coming from, here's a backstory. So for decades, Microsoft research centers across the globe has been working on this groundbreaking research around these APIs, these AI services, to even attain human parity with regards to language, vision, etc. And they've been using the work, their research, into their own products like Bing, O365, Xbox, etc. So whatever AI capabilities that we're seeing in these suite of products today from Microsoft is actually based off cognitive services. So simply put, cognitive services is the easiest, the fastest, the quickest way for us to integrate AI as part of our applications. If you would like to add Wall-E-like capabilities, poignant, emotional, smart, you probably stand a chance today. So here's cognitive services around the 5 major service categories that we discussed. And these are the set of APIs, and this is just increasing by the day. So we probably not have the time to cover all of these, but just for the sake of our demo, we would cover just 1 or 2 use cases. So imagine we're building the conference bot, as we discussed, and the user is asking, when is the conference happening? The bot would obviously want to respond with the dates of the conference. Sounds straightforward? So the challenge is 100 users would use or ask that same question 100 different ways. It's just the way we play with language. One person would ask dates of conference, another person would ask AZ community conference dates, when is it? Is it on this date or that date? And the bot would need to account for all of these. It would need to understand that irrespective of whatever way the user asks that, the answer needs to be the same. So there is a service from Cognitive Services that will help us to this regard, and this is called QAMaker.ai. As you see on the screen, it provides an ability to create a knowledge repository of questions and answer. So here's a quick demo on the Q&A Maker. If you go to QAMaker.ai, that's the portal, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new knowledge base. So click that button there, and here we go. A couple of steps that we need to do. First up, we create a Q&A service, which is just creating a resource inside Azure the way we saw it earlier. Once we have that, we just tie in all our subscription names tied to that Q&A service, select a language, would probably be English. Name your Q&A KB. So you can name it as you like. That would be a name I would choose. And then you can populate your QB. Your KB can actually be built ground up, fresh with all the question answers. If you have an FAQ page on your website, you can point it to that. You can even upload a PDF document and have the question answers in there. So Q&A inbuilt has the capability to parse out these question answer pairs from the documents or from the URLs, which is very intelligent. And this is a section I really like that adds chit chat. So chit chat is about the capability to add personality related questions. So you could expect users to, irrespective of whatever domain you cater to, it's quite natural for users to ask questions like, how are you? Or say a thanks. And you not want to leave that unattended. To entertain those kind of chit chat questions, you get a little help from Microsoft out of the box. If you configure one of these personalities, say I choose enthusiastic for my bot, for the AZ conference bot. So what happens is that when I go ahead and create the KB, I get to start off with a set of 80 to 90 Q&A pairs right off the bat. And those are just general questions that any user could ask your bot. So you are left to just focus on the business specific question answers. So I've created a Q&A likewise, and I've added a couple of questions for my AZ conference bot, like on the keynote speakers and the number of days. And this is what we were talking to. So there's the, when is the conference happening? I can add all those alternate questions. Like here, I can add alternate questions. And you'd see that there's an answer here. Note that this is really a rich text editor. You can add images, etc. And this is the chit chat part we were talking about, just a lot of question answers that you can see and you get out of the box, like so many that the Microsoft team has provided for you. And once you're happy with whatever you've created, what you would do is go ahead, save and train. As you add more questions, quick Q&A pairs to this repository, you'd have to save and train. And just like we tested inside the Azure portal, we have a test pane within the Q&A Maker site itself. So I can ask, when is the conference happening, for example. And I could ask, are you a human or a bot? So this comes from the chit chat part. So depending on the personality that you choose, the answer could have different variations. So if it's professional, the answer could be a little professional. And if it's enthusiastic, that's what you get. So I save and train, I test, and then finally I would publish it. So when I publish it, what happens is I publish a Q&A endpoint, and that's another API endpoint that my bot or my application can consume. So I have a bot here that has actually consumed that API. And so I'll run you through the same questions that we tested it out in the Q&A maker. So because this is now connected to that API endpoint, it should be able to answer questions like when is the conference. So it's as simple as that, having a Q&A bot. Now, the fun part is we've seen how to build a bot, connect the bot, test the bot. So we are yet to see how to connect a bot. We've seen how to build a bot, test a bot, publish it. Now we get to the fun part, which is connect. As I said, now we can have the provision to connect the bot to the various channels that you see. So Facebook, Slack, Telegram, Twilio, all this is supported out of the box, which means that with very little configuration from your side, you can actually have this source code that you've worked on to run in these channels. For example, Alexa is one of the latest channels to be coming to the Azure portal. So let's try connecting with an Azure skill. Alexa skill, sorry. So what you need is that you need to just provide your Alexa skill ID. So to get the Alexa skill ID, it essentially means that I need to create an Alexa skill. So I go to my Alexa developer portal and I need to create a skill there, which is, okay, let's create a skill and let's name the skill. So that's Azure Conference Demo Skill. And all right, I would go down and I would choose a model, custom model. I'm hosting it in Azure, so I would provision that on my own. And one more step, I need to choose a template for my skill to just start from scratch. I don't want to use any of the pre-built templates. It's a very simple skill to just connect it to my bot. And besides, I have the logic and all in my Azure bot, so I don't want to do a lot of rocket science here. So once we're inside the skill, two areas that we need to change. By the way, the complete documentation on how to connect to Alexa, or for that matter, any other channel, is available inside the Microsoft Docs. So that's docs.microsoft.com. You get to see detailed documentation for each of it here. And this is for Alexa. I've placed all of these in my references section for this deck, so feel free to refer to it. So all the steps that are contained in this document is what we're trying out right now. So as I said, you get back to here and two areas that we need to edit inside our skill. First off, the JSON editor. So in the JSON editor, what we're going to do is that we need to replace this entire JSON file. And I'll tell you why and what that is in a moment. For now, I'm just copying this JSON file from here and I'm posting it here. So this is essentially your voice model. And this will tell Alexa what kind of expressions or phrases it can expect to get from your bot. First off, you need to name your Alexa bot. Like if I name it, say AzBot, it would mean that I will call it Alexa Ask AzBot or Alexa Open AzBot. And then you need to just configure a couple of example phrases. Like one of the example phrases that it can be is when is the conference. And likewise, I can put in any number of example phrases that I like. Just for the sake of time, we will keep it short, but make sure you configure those example phrases as you build your bot. And I would save it and I would build the model. Simple. So we've done with the JSON editor. The next section we would want to alter is the endpoint section. So the endpoint section is what tells the Alexa skill about your bot. What is the endpoint of your bot? And I don't want to put it in AWS. Mine is on Azure. So I would want to configure an HTTPS endpoint. And my bot does have an HTTPS endpoint. Come back to my Azure portal. We copy this endpoint. I paste it here. All right. And I'm going to choose an SSL certificate, the second option here. My development endpoint is a subdomain of a domain that has a wildcard certificate. That's it. So I configured my endpoints and I'm saving my endpoints. Two areas that we need to edit. One is the JSON editor, and the second part is the endpoint section. Final touches, we'll go and we will save the model again. We'll build it. And if you go back to your skills dashboard, you'd see by now that you have an Alexa skill. And what we came here for is for the skill ID. We will copy that, go back to our Azure portal, and we'll paste it there. Save it, and our bot is ready to run on Alexa. So the beauty of the bot platform, our Azure Bot Service, you see now Alexa is ready. So this is saying the beauty of the bot is you have a single source code which you can run on multiple channels with very less configuration. Let's test this out inside Alexa. So I'm going to open that skill, and we can test that within the Alexa channel just like we tested it within the portal itself. Just need to turn on development here, and let's see. So how we would test this is you can use the voice button as well. I will keep this simple. Alexa, ask AzBot, when is the conference? Let's see.
The Azure Community Conference is being held on 24th to 26th of November, 2020, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. IST.
Oh boy, how cool is that? So with very minimal configuration, oh, by the way, if you are interested, please go ahead and distribute it. And you go to the distribution section, you can play it out even with your device, your Alexa device. So it's pretty cool that you can actually have all of this just work off the bat for you. And that is really the power of the Azure Bot Service. So we're just going to quickly wrap this up. And before we go ahead, I'll show you another service as well. So this is the AZ conference bot again, but imagine people are really looking for sessions. So if someone wants to look for sessions on chatbots, that's interesting because you can ask that in a variety of ways. And again, as I said, the bot would need to cater to these various utterances, though the intent would be the same, which is finding a session. The bot would need to respect all these various utterances. It gets a little complicated because people can ask for different kinds of sessions like Azure Data Platform, MongoDB, Azure IoT, mixed reality, blockchain, and whatnot. So by the way, these are sessions coming up in the next hour, so make sure you don't miss them out. Great sessions. So I would encapsulate that into a topic and maybe take that out as an entity. So there I have an additional variable in this equation. To help me understand what that intent is and to help me around with entities, I'd use a service called LUIS. That's Language Understanding Intelligence Service. So there's so many other services like that that you can probably use. So let's think about what it takes to build an intelligent conversation now, just from a bot's perspective. First up, it needs to understand the user's ask. Second, it needs to know what to respond. To understand the user's ask, it would use LUIS, Language Understanding Intelligence Service. To know what to respond, it would use the Q&A maker. And likewise, it can use a plethora of cognitive services, like it can use content moderation APIs to sort of moderate for profanity. It can use multilingual APIs, translation APIs, sentiment analysis APIs. So it's totally up to you and your creativity on what you can use to mimic the human-like persona there. And we just scratched the surface in terms of capabilities. Really, you can build very sophisticated virtual assistants using the same bot framework. An example is the La Liga bot that's now available in Google Assistant. Microsoft and La Liga worked together to build this bot. Not sure how many La Liga fans are here. My son loves La Liga and is a huge Messi fan, so he's always on this bot and it works just great. And there's a lot of customer momentum across the globe around the bot framework, and the possibilities are just endless. So here you have it full circle, BDLC in Azure. You can plan, build, test, publish, connect, and evaluate. So before we end, a quick note on responsible AI, because as much as the tools and techniques that we have at our disposal today, I think it's important and imperative for us to build AI systems and applications that are inclusive, fair, and unbiased. If we kind of remind ourselves that every line of code that we as developers, AI developers, write today is going to be a decision that we are building for the futures of our family and our community tomorrow. So I'll leave you with that thought, and I'll thank you for taking your time out again, for your patience with this session. We'll open it up for Q&A, but meanwhile, I'd also like to give you that there are references to all the sections that we've covered in this topic thus far. And thank you once again for coming up, and hope you have a great conference, and stay tuned.